They said an Omega without a pack was as good as dead. When the Crimson Claw pack threw Anna out into the merciless bite of the northern winter, they expected to find her frozen corpse decorating the snow come spring. They anticipated crows picking at her flesh, wolves gnawing at her bones, and the wilderness reclaiming what civilization had discarded. They wagered on her weakness, placed their bets on her fragility, and toasted to her demise with goblets of wine that cost more than her entire existence had ever been worth to them. But Anna didn't die. Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. If you're hooked in and you're ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now let us begin. Chapter 1, The Broken and the Discarded. Anna survived because of a scrawny half-dead pup she found shivering under her porch on the coldest night of December. She fed him her last scraps of dried meat and told him her darkest secrets. She whispered her shame into his matted fur and cried her tears into his broken body. She thought she was just saving a stray, a kindred spirit cast aside by the cruel machinations of fate. She had no idea that by saving him, she was waking up a war, because that wasn't just a pup. And the 5 black wolves standing outside her cabin door 3 months later, they didn't come to kill her. They came to bow. The isolation of the Alaskan wilderness changes a person in ways that city wolves could never comprehend. It strips away the pretense of civilization like bark peeling from a dead tree, leaving nothing but the raw pulsing beat of one's own heart and the eternal howl of the wind. It teaches you that loneliness is not the absence of people. It is the presence of yourself, unfiltered, unmasked, and terrifyingly honest. Anna had once been the daughter of the Gamma of the Crimson Claw Pack. Not quite nobility, but close enough to taste the silver spoons without ever being allowed to eat from them. She had grown up in a 3-story manor with heated floors and imported fabrics, had attended pack ceremonies draped in silk, and had been told her entire life that her worth would be determined by the alpha she married. Now she was a rogue, a rejected Omega living in a rotting trapper's cabin on the edge of the neutral territory known as Widow's Peak. A name that suddenly felt less like geography and more like prophecy. Her crime? She had refused to become the mistress of Alpha Dominic's son, Garrett. He hadn't taken rejection well. Men like Garrett never did. They were raised on a steady diet of entitlement and ego, fed by mothers who told them they were gods and fathers who showed them that women were merely vessels for pleasure and procreation. When Anna had looked into his cold gray eyes and said no, she might as well have spoken in a foreign language. No. Garrett had laughed, his handsome face twisting into something ugly. You're an Omega, Anna. You don't get to say no. You should be grateful. I'm even looking at you. Then look elsewhere, she had replied, her voice steady despite the terror coursing through her veins, because I would rather freeze to death alone than warm your bed. Those words had sealed her fate. A week later, pack funds went missing. Jewelry belonging to the Luna was found hidden in Anna's dresser. Forged documents appeared with her handwriting, implicating her in a theft she had never committed. The evidence was damning, meticulously planted, and devastatingly effective. Her own mother had looked at her with disappointment swimming in eyes that had once held nothing but love. How could you? Her mother had whispered. After everything we gave you, I didn't do this, Anna had pleaded, tears streaming down her face. Mother, please, you have to believe me. This is Garrett's revenge. He's framing me because I wouldn't. Enough. Her father's voice had cracked like a whip, silencing the room. He stood before her, the man who had taught her to fish, who had carried her on his shoulders during summer festivals, who had promised to always protect her. Now he looked at her like she was a stranger wearing his daughter's face. The council has decided, her father announced, his voice void of the warmth she had known her entire life. You are hereby banished from Crimson Claw territory. You are stripped of pack protection, pack name, and pack resources. You have until dawn to leave. Father, don't. The word was a blade cutting deeper than any physical wound. Don't call me that. Leave, Anna. Before I forget, you were ever my daughter, so she left. She walked out of the only home she had ever known with nothing but the clothes on her back and a hunting knife her grandmother had given her years ago. No one stopped her. No one called after her. The pack she had served, the family she had loved, the friends she had trusted, they all watched her disappear into the night without a single voice raised in her defense. The silence was louder than any scream. Life in the wilderness was a brutal loop of survival that left no room for self-pity or despair. Those were luxuries reserved for people who had time to think. And Anna's days were consumed entirely by the simple savage necessity of staying alive. Chop wood before the frost set in. Check traps before the ravens stole her catches. Melt snow for water before dehydration claimed her. Sleep with one eye open and a knife under her pillow. Repeat. The cabin she had found was a miracle wrapped in decay, a trapper's hut abandoned decades ago, half swallowed by the encroaching forest, but still standing stubbornly against the elements. The roof leaked in 3 places. The door hung crooked on rusted hinges, and mice had claimed the corners as their personal kingdoms, but it had 4 walls and a fireplace, and in the depths of an Alaskan winter that was worth more than gold. Anna learned to patch holes with moss and mud. She learned to set snares and skin rabbits with efficiency that would have horrified her former self. She learned to read the weather and the color of the sky and the behavior of the birds. She learned that hunger was a patient teacher, that cold was an honest enemy, and that loneliness was a companion you could grow to tolerate. It was brutal. It was terrifying. It was, ironically, the freest she had ever felt. There were no expectations here, no performative smiles at pack gatherings. No pretending to be smaller, softer, and more compliant than she actually was. No tiptoeing around the fragile egos of wolves who measured their worth by how thoroughly they could dominate others. Here she was just Anna, a woman with calloused hands and wild hair, and a heart that refused to stop beating despite every reason it should. The solitude was peaceful until the day she found him. It was late November, and the frost had turned the world into a kingdom of glass. Trees cracked and groaned under the weight of ice. The creek had frozen solid enough to walk across, though Anna avoided it anyway. Ice was treacherous, and she had no one to pull her out if she fell through. She was checking a rabbit snare near the edge of the pine forest when she heard it. A whine, high-pitched and desperate, barely audible over the mournful wail of the wind. It was the sound of suffering, of an animal at the end of its rope, calling out with the last breath of hope before succumbing to the inevitable. Anna froze, her ears straining. The sound came again, weaker this time, more of a whimper than a cry against every survival instinct she had developed over the past 3 years. She followed it. The sound led her to a hollowed-out log half buried in snow. She had to crawl on her hands and knees to peer inside, the cold biting through her gloves and soaking into her bones. Inside, curled into a tight ball of muddy, matted fur, was a wolf pup. He was a mess, a disaster of blood, bone, and barely breathing flesh. His ribs jutted through his coat like the bars of a cage. One of his ears was torn nearly in half, the wound still fresh and weeping. His back leg was bent at an angle that made Anna's stomach turn broken, clearly and likely infected. He looked like a runt. He looked like something discarded by a cruel world. He looked, Anna realized with a painful clench in her chest, exactly like her. "Hey there, little guy," she whispered, her voice soft and gentle despite the cold that made her teeth chatter. "It's okay, I'm not going to hurt you." The pup's response was immediate and fierce. He snapped at her, baring tiny teeth that were sharp as needles despite his weakened state. His eyes and ear. Anna paused. Something stirring in her memory were a startling shade of violet, unusual, almost unnatural. The color reminded her of twilight skies and ancient magic, of stories her grandmother used to tell about wolves touched by the moon goddess herself. High lineage shifters sometimes had unusual eye colors. Gold, silver, the rare crimson of royal blood, but violet. Anna pushed the thought away. The pup didn't smell like a shifter. There was no undercurrent of human soul beneath the animal musk. He smelled of pine and dried blood and wet dog. Just a regular wolf, probably abandoned by his pack because of his deformities. It happened more often than people like to admit. In the natural world, weakness was a death sentence, and packs couldn't afford to waste resources on runs who would never contribute to the hunt. Cruelty, Anna thought bitterly, was the only universal language. "I told you," she murmured, reaching slowly into her pocket. "I'm not going to hurt you." She pulled out a strip of dried venison. It was supposed to be her lunch, her only meal, until she could check her traps tomorrow. But looking at the pup's hollow ribs and desperate eyes, she couldn't bring herself to care. She tossed the meat into the log. The pup devoured it in seconds, barely chewing before swallowing. Then he looked at her, those violet eyes bright with intelligence, waiting for more. "That's all I've got, buddy," Anna sighed. "Sorry." She studied his broken leg, her mind racing through possibilities. The practical part of her brain, the part that had kept her alive for 3 years in this unforgiving wilderness, whispered that she should walk away. The pup was too injured, too weak. Trying to save him would drain resources she couldn't afford to waste. It was interfering with nature, and nature didn't look kindly on interference. But the other part of her brain, the part that remembered being looked at with disgust by her own father, the part that remembered walking into the wilderness with nothing but a knife and a broken heart, couldn't abandon him. Because looking at him, broken and rejected and alone, she saw herself. "You're not going to make it through the night out here," she said quietly, as much to herself as to him. "The temperature is going to drop below -30 and you're already half frozen." The pup growled, a pitiful sound that was more bravado than threat. Anna made her decision. She unwrapped the scarf from her neck, a threadbare thing that had once been burgundy, but had faded to something closer to rust, and carefully reached into the log. The pup snapped and snarled, but he was too weak to put up a real fight. She wrapped him as gently as she could, mindful of his injured leg, and lifted him out of his frozen prison. He was lighter than she expected, nothing but bones and fur and stubborn will. "It's okay," she murmured against his matted head as she tucked him inside her coat. "I've got you. Us rejects have to stick together, right?" The pup stopped struggling. Whether from exhaustion or some primal recognition of safety, she couldn't say. But as she began the trek back to her cabin, she felt his tiny heart beating against her chest, rapid and frightened, but alive. Still alive. Against all odds, he was still alive, just like her. She named him Ash. It seemed fitting. His coat, once she had cleaned it, was a strange silvery gray that reminded her of the ash left behind after a fire. And like Ash, he had emerged from destruction, transformed perhaps, but not destroyed. The first week was touch and go. Anna splinted his leg using sticks and strips of an old flannel shirt that she could no longer wear anyway. She cleaned his wounds with melted snow and applied picuses made from herbs she had learned to identify during her years of isolation. She fed him broth made from the bones of her catches, and when he grew strong enough for solid food, she shared her own meager portions without complaint. She talked to him constantly. At first, it was practical, a running commentary on what she was doing. "I'm going to check your leg now, so don't bite me," or explanations of the sounds outside. "That's just the wind, not a predator. So, settle down." But as days turned into weeks, the talking became something more. She told him about her pack, about her mother, who made the best honey cakes in the territory, and who had looked at Anna with such disappointment that day, about her father who had taught her to track deer when she was barely old enough to walk. About her younger brother, Micah, who she hoped had grown tall and strong, who she prayed didn't believe the lies they had told about her. She told him about Garrett. "He thought he owned me," she confessed one evening as Ash gnawed on a deer bone by the fire. His leg was healing faster than she had expected. Unnaturally fast, really. But she didn't let herself dwell on that because he was the future alpha's son. He thought every omega in the pack was his to take. And when I said no, she trailed off, staring into the flames. "They believed him over me, my own family. They took the word of a spoiled, entitled brat over their own daughter." Her laugh was bitter, hollow. "I guess that tells you everything you need to know about how much I mattered." Ash stopped chewing. He looked up at her, those violet eyes unblinking, and let out a low huff that sounded almost sympathetic. Anna smiled despite herself, reaching down to scratch behind his ears. "You get it, don't you? Being thrown away like garbage, being written off as worthless," she sighed. "But look at us now, still alive, still fighting. That's got to count for something." Ash hobbled over. His leg was healing, but he still favored it and rested his head on her knee. The weight of it was oddly comforting. "Yeah," she whispered, her hand gentle on his fur. "Us rejects have to stick together." Outside, the wind held its agreement, and Anna didn't feel quite so alone anymore. Chapter 2. The Wolf Who Watched. Winter deepened its grip on the wilderness, and Ash grew. He grew fast, unnaturally fast, in ways that made Anna's instincts prickle with unease, even as she chose to ignore them. By December, his leg had healed completely, the break mending with a speed that defied everything she knew about animal physiology. By January, he was the size of a full-grown timber wolf. His once matted coat now thick and lustrous, shimmering with that strange silvery gray that caught the firelight like moonbeams on water. He was beautiful, and he was strange. Anna noticed the oddities in small ways at first. He never barked, not once in all the weeks she had known him. While normal wolves were vocal creatures, communicating through a symphony of yips and howls and huffs, Ash was almost eerily silent. He would growl when threatened and whine when he wanted attention, but the sounds were measured, deliberate, almost calculated. He never marked territory. Any normal wolf would have claimed the area around the cabin within days, leaving his scent on trees and rocks to warn away rivals. But Ash seemed utterly uninterested in such primal behaviors, as if they were beneath him somehow. And the watching god, Anna would wake in the depths of night, pulled from sleep by some instinct she couldn't name, to find Ash sitting ramrod straight by the window. His gaze would be fixed on the tree, not with the idle curiosity of an animal tracking prey, but with the focused intensity of a sentinel on duty. His ears would be pricked forward, his muscles coiled with tension, every line of his body radiating alertness. He wasn't watching for squirrels. He was keeping guard. Anna told herself it was just her imagination. The isolation was playing tricks on her mind, making her see patterns where none existed. Ash was just a wolf, a particularly intelligent, unusually beautiful wolf, but a wolf nonetheless. There was nothing supernatural about him. And yet when she talked to him, he seemed to understand, not in the way pets sometimes appear to comprehend their owner's moods, but genuinely understand the nuances, the implications, the unspoken things beneath the words. His eyes would track her face with an attention that felt almost human. He would react to jokes with huffs that sounded like stifled laughter. He would press against her legs when she cried, as if offering comfort. It was probably nothing. It had to be nothing. Garrett was a monster, Anna said one evening as February's bitter cold rattled the cabin walls. She was mending a tear in her coat, fingers stiff despite the fire's warmth, while Ash lay at her feet like a great silver guardian. Not the kind you can see no fangs or claws or obvious villain. He was the worst kind of monster, the kind that smiles while it destroys you. She paused, needle poised mid-stitch, lost in memories she usually kept locked away. He had this way of making everyone believe he was charming, generous, the perfect future alpha. But I saw beneath the mask. Her voice hardened. I saw how he looked at the Omegas when no one else was watching. Like we were prey, like we were entertainment. Ash's ears flattened against his skull, a low rumble building in his chest. When I rejected him, he couldn't comprehend it. I mean, really couldn't understand. In his mind, I should have been grateful for his attention. A lowly Gamma's daughter chosen by the Alpha's heir. I should have fallen at his feet weeping with joy. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Instead, I told him I'd rather freeze to death alone. And you know what the worst part is? She looked down at Ash, who met her gaze with those impossibly violet eyes. The worst part is that he's probably already forgotten I exist. To him, destroying my life was a minor inconvenience. A brief irritation. He's probably moved on to his next victim without ever losing a minute's sleep. She finished the stitch and bit off the thread, but I think about it every day. I carry what he did with me like a stone in my chest, and he gets to live without consequences. She shook her head. That's the thing about power, Ash. It doesn't just let you do terrible things, it lets you forget you did them. Ash rose from his spot by the fire and padded over to her. He was massive now. His head reached her shoulder when she was seated, but his movements were gentle as he nudged her hand with his cold nose. I know, Anna sighed, scratching behind his ears. Wallowing in self-pity won't change anything, but sometimes it feels good to say it out loud, to have someone listen, even if they can't respond. Ash made a sound that was almost like a sigh. You're a good listener, she told him. Better than any therapist, and you work for table scraps, which is definitely more affordable. He huffed that strange laugh-like sound and settled his massive head on her lap. Anna smiled, her hand moving rhythmically through his fur. What would I do without you, huh? You're the only thing keeping me sane out here. The fire crackled, the wind howled, and Ash's violet eyes fixed on the door glowed faintly in the dancing light. March brought the first hints of spring, a softening in the air, a lengthening of days, a sense of the world slowly exhaling after holding its breath through winter's worst. Anna's traps were yielding more game now that the animals were emerging from their own survival modes. And for the first time in months, she felt something almost like optimism. It wouldn't last. The morning everything changed, started like any other. Anna woke to pale light filtering through the cabin's grimy windows and the sound of Ash pacing. That wasn't unusual. He often paced in the mornings, restless after a night of guarding. But today, something was different. His movements were jerky, agitated, his hackles were raised, and low growls kept rumbling from his chest like distant thunder. Ash, settle down, Anna scolded, swinging her legs out of bed. The floor was cold, even through her wool socks. I need to check the perimeter before. She reached for her boots, but Ash moved to block the door. He stood there, massive and immovable, teeth bared, and eyes blazing with an intensity she had never seen before. What the hell? She took a step forward. Ash moved, he didn't budge. Instead, he pushed her back with his snout hard enough that she stumbled, nearly falling. Hey. Anger flashed through her, replacing the unease. What is wrong with? Then she heard it. The crunch of tires on snow. Anna's blood froze in her veins. Her cabin was miles off any main road, accessible only by a barely visible trail that she had deliberately allowed to become overgrown. No one came here, not hunters, not hikers, not lost travelers, no one. She ran to the window, heart hammering against her ribs like a caged bird trying to escape. Coming up the winding trail, moving with the slow inevitability of an approaching storm, were 5 vehicles, not the rusted pickup trucks of local hunters or the battered SUVs of forestry workers. These were matte black Range Rovers with tinted windows and reinforced bumpers, their frames hulking and armored. They looked less like cars and more like weapons war machines designed for one purpose. They stopped in the clearing arranged in a precise semicircle about 30 yards from her porch. The engines cut off in perfect unison, a choreography that spoke of training and discipline. Hunters, Anna whispered, panic rising like bile in her throat. They found me, someone told them. But Ash wasn't looking at the vehicles with fear. He was looking at them with recognition. The doors of the SUVs opened simultaneously, as if controlled by a single mind. 5 men stepped out first, one from each vehicle. They were massive, even from this distance. Anna could see the breadth of their shoulders, the coiled power in their movements. They radiated an aura that pressed against her senses like a physical weight, making her wolf her weak. Omega Wolf, want to cower? Werewolves, powerful ones. They wore tactical gear, dark gray combat pants, black sweaters stretched tight over muscular chests, and heavy boots designed for both stealth and violence. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. They moved with synchronized precision that spoke of years of training together, of blood shared and battles won. Then they shifted. Anna had seen werewolves transform before. It was part of pack life. The casual shifting during hunts, the ceremonial shifts during full moons, the forced shifts during punishments. But she had never seen anything like this. It was terrifying. Bones snapped and reformed in seconds, not minutes. Flesh rippled like water, fur erupting in waves of darkness. Where 5 men had stood, 5 wolves now prowled, but calling them wolves felt like calling a hurricane a breeze. They were massive, easily twice the size of normal wolves, with shoulders that reached the roofline of the cars they'd emerged from. Their fur was pitch black, not dark gray or deep brown but true black, the color of moonless nights and bottomless pits. Their eyes glowed like molten gold, burning with intelligence and barely contained violence. Black wolves. In the werewolf world, black wolves were rare bred for one thing and one thing only: lethality. They were executioners, assassins, the monsters that alphas sent when they wanted someone not just killed but erased, and they were circling her cabin. Anna backed away from the window, her mind racing through useless calculations. She grabbed the fire poker from beside the hearth, a laughable weapon against shifters of that caliber, but it was all she had. "Ash," she whispered, her voice trembling, "hide, get under the bed, they'll kill you if they find you." But Ash didn't hide. He walked to the center of the room and sat down facing the door. His posture was regal, his head held high, his silver-gray fur gleaming in the pale light. He looked like a king on a throne, awaiting supplicants. "What are you, Toad?" A heavy paw struck the front door, making the entire cabin shake. "Tot, open the door, woman," a voice boomed from outside. It wasn't the snarl of a wolf, one of them had shifted back. "We know you have him. Hand over the asset and your death will be painless. Resist and we burn this cabin to ashes." "Asset?" Anna looked at Ash. Ash looked back at her, his violet eyes calm, almost apologetic. Something clicked in Anna's mind. Pieces of a puzzle she hadn't realized she was assembling. The unusual eye color, the unnatural healing, the human-like intelligence, the way he had watched the Triane every night. Not like prey expecting predators, but like a soldier expecting enemies. "Who are you?" she breathed. Ash didn't answer. Couldn't answer. But the truth was settling over her like a shroud. The pup she had found, the companion she had nursed back to health, the friend she had poured her secrets into. He wasn't just a wolf. He had never been just a wolf. "I don't care," she said suddenly, surprising even herself. Her grip tightened on the fire poker, and something hot and fierce ignited in her chest. "I don't care what you are or who they want. I saved you. I fed you. You're mine now." She marched toward the door. "Anna, wait." But she was already throwing the bolt, already yanking the door open, already stepping onto the porch to face her death with the same stubbornness that had kept her alive in the wilderness. The cold air hit her like a wall. Standing before her was a man who looked like he had been carved from granite. He was shirtless despite the freezing temperature, steam rising from his pale skin. His face was handsome in a cruel way. Sharp cheekbones, a jaw that could cut glass, and eyes the color of liquid gold. Behind him, the 5 enormous black wolves snarled, their jaws snapping, their muscles coiled to spring. "Where is he?" the man demanded. "There's no one here but me and a stray dog." Anna lied, planting herself in the doorway. "I don't know who you're looking for, but you've made a mistake." The man's eyes narrowed. "Don't insult my intelligence, Omega. The tracker spell led us here. We know the target is in this cabin. Then your magic is broken." The man stepped forward, his hand raising as if to strike her aside. "Don't touch her." The voice came from behind Anna. It didn't belong to the man on the porch. It didn't belong to any of the wolves. It was a voice Anna had never heard before, and yet it resonated in her very bones, vibrating through her marrow like the deep toll of an ancient bell. It was the voice of command, deep, resonant, and dripping with absolute, unquestionable power. Anna froze. The man on the porch froze. The 5 black wolves stopped growling, their golden eyes widening. As one, they lowered their massive heads to the snow. Slowly, Anna turned around. Ash was gone. In the center of her living room stood a man. Chapter 3, The Wolf Eater. He was tall, taller than the executioner on the porch, taller than any man Anna had ever seen. His body was lean but powerful. Every inch of exposed skin, a map of corded muscle and old scars. His hair was the exact silvery gray of Ash's, fur falling in messy waves over his forehead. He was naked, his modesty covered only by the shadows cast by the dying fire. But it was his eyes that stopped Anna's heart. Violet, deep swirling violet, the color of twilight skies and ancient magic, of stories whispered by grandmothers and legends that walked among men. The same violet eyes that had looked at her with gratitude when she shared her meager food. The same violet eyes that had watched her cry into the darkness and had seemed to understand every word she spoke. The man who had been her dog for 3 months looked at the terrifying soldiers outside, then looked down at her. "Hello, Anna," he said softly. His voice was velvet over steel, gentle and terrifying in equal measure. I'm sorry. I would have told you sooner if I could have. She couldn't speak. Her brain was trying to process the impossible geometry of the situation, trying to reconcile the broken pup she had cradled against her chest with the godlike figure standing before her. He walked past her, stepping onto the porch. The cold didn't seem to affect him any more than it had affected Ash. The executioner on the porch, this massive, terrifying warrior who had threatened to burn her alive, immediately dropped to one knee. His forehead nearly touched the icy wood as he bowed. Lord Kalen, the man choked out. We did not know. The tracker spell only showed your location. We thought you were being held captive. We thought behind him the 5 black wolves were no longer standing. They were belly crawling through the snow, exposing their throats in the most extreme show of submission Anna had ever witnessed. Galen. The name hit Anna like a physical blow and she staggered back against the doorframe. Everyone in the shifter world knew that name. It was spoken in whispers and warnings in legends and nightmares. Kalen Vaughn, the alpha of the Shadowfang Dominion, the largest, most lethal pack in the Northern Hemisphere. His territory spanned 3 countries, his warriors numbered in the thousands, his enemies numbered among the dead. They called him the Wolf Eater. Rumors said he had been missing for 4 months. Some claimed he was dead, assassinated by rivals. Others whispered that he had gone mad and disappeared into the wilderness. The Shifter Council had been in chaos, various factions positioning themselves to claim pieces of his empire, and Anna had been feeding him leftover rabbit stew. Captive, Kalen repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. He took a step toward the kneeling man. Do I look like a captive, Commander Vex? No, Alpha. Vex's voice trembled. You look restored. Restored, Kalen mused. He turned to look at Anna. Really, look at her. And the softness that entered his eyes was so at odds with his terrifying presence that it made her breath catch. Yes, I suppose I am. He reached out a hand toward her. Anna flinched. Kalen froze, a flash of something pain. Regret crossed his face before he carefully lowered his hand. I'm not going to hurt you, Anna. I told you that the first day you found me. His voice was gentle now, stripped of command, just a man speaking to a woman. You were my salvation. The least I can do is explain you. Anna's voice cracked. She swallowed and tried again. You were a wolf. You let me. I told you everything. I cried into your fur. I talked to you like you were like I was your friend. Kalen finished quietly. And I am you lied to me. I was trapped. His expression grew grim. The poison they used on me. My own brother Malachar orchestrated a coup while I was negotiating a treaty with the northern clans. His assassins ambushed me, injected me with a compound of wolfbane, silver nitrate, and something else. Something ancient and vile. It locked me in my shift, severed my connection to my human form. I was dying, Anna. My wolf was fading. He took a step closer. The heat radiating off his body was immense, like standing next to a furnace. I fled. I don't know how far I ran or for how long. I just knew I had to get away. Had to find somewhere safe to die. And then I found your cabin. His voice softened. I found you. Anna shook her head, trying to process. But how if you were trapped, you fed me? Kalen's eyes never left hers. You healed my body when it was broken. You talked to me, shared your pain with me, made me feel less alone. And your scent, he closed his eyes briefly as if savoring a memory. Your scent anchored me. It called to something deep in my wolf. Something that refused to let go. Every time I felt myself slipping away, I would breathe you in and it would pull me back. My scent, Anna's confusion was giving way to something else. Something that made her heart race in ways that had nothing to do with fear. Kalen opened his eyes. In their violet depths, she saw something raw and vulnerable, an emotion that the most powerful alpha in the hemisphere had no business displaying. You're my mate, Anna. The words hung in the air like the aftermath of a thunderclap. That's Anna shook her head violently. That's impossible. I'm an Omega, a banished Omega. I can't be. The bond doesn't care about rank. Kalen's voice was firm but gentle. It doesn't care about politics or pack law or what you've been told you're worth. You are my mate. My wolf recognized you before I even knew what was happening. You brought me back from the edge of death with nothing but kindness and scraps of food. He turned back to the soldiers who were still frozen in their positions of submission. The softness vanished from his face as if it had never existed. Give me a coat, he commanded. Commander Vex scrambled up and stripped off his tactical jacket, handing it over with averted eyes. Kalen shrugged it on. It was laughably tight across his shoulders and turned back to Anna. We don't have much time. Malachar has declared himself alpha in my absence. He's consolidating power, eliminating anyone who might oppose him. When his trackers realize I'm still alive, they'll come for you, Anna whispered. They'll come for both of us. His expression was grave. Malachar won't just want me dead now. He'll want to destroy anything that helped me survive. That includes you. Fear clawed at Anna's chest, but beneath it was something else. A spark of defiance, a flame that had kept burning through 3 years of isolation and rejection. I'm not leaving, she said. Kalen's eyebrows rose. This is my home. Anna's voice grew stronger. The only place in the world that's mine. I'm not running because your family drama has spilled onto my doorstep. For a moment, Kalen just stared at her. Then slowly, a smile spread across his face. A real smile, the kind that crinkled the corners of his eyes and made him look almost boyish. There she is, he murmured. The woman who stood between 5 Onks executioners and a crippled pup with nothing but a fire poker. I didn't know they were executioners at the time. Would it have changed anything? Anna thought about it honestly. Probably not. Kalen's smile widened. That's my mate. The next hour was a whirlwind of activity. Vex and his wolves, who turned out to be loyalists who had been searching for Kalen since his disappearance, transformed the cabin into a temporary command center. Communications equipment was unloaded from the vehicles. Maps were spread across Anna's tiny table. Rapid-fire conversations in codes she didn't understand filled the air. Through it all, Kalen stayed close to her, not touching. He seemed to understand that she needed time to adjust, but present. A warm, solid presence at the edge of her awareness that made her wolf, her weak, worthless Omega wolf, as she had been told her whole life, practically purr with contentment, which was confusing as hell. The summit is in 3 days, Vex reported, pointing to a location on the map. Malachar has called all allied packs to swear fealty at the Grand Hall in Vancouver. He's moving fast. If he secures those oaths before anyone realizes you're alive, his claim becomes nearly unshakable, Kalen finished. Even if I emerge later, challenging a seated alpha with sworn alliances is exponentially harder. So we crashed the summit, Anna said. Everyone turned to look at her. She flushed under the attention but pressed on. That's what you're thinking, right? Show up. Prove you're alive. Challenge him in front of witnesses. It's not that simple. Vex's tone was patient but condescending. The alpha must prove his fitness to lead. Malachar will have prepared for the possibility of a challenge. He'll have advantages, weapons, enchantments, loyal guards waiting to intervene. Then don't fight fair. Kalen leaned forward, interest sparking in his eyes. Go on, Anna took a deep breath. She was way out of her depth here, an exile Omega lecturing military commanders about strategy. But she had spent 3 years surviving in the wilderness. And if that taught her anything, it was that the rules were just suggestions. Malachar tried to kill his own brother. She said, that's the worst crime in pack law, isn't it? Fratricide. It is, Kalen confirmed. Then the goal shouldn't be to beat him in a fight. The goal should be to prove his crime in front of the allied packs. Turn his supporters against him before any blows are struck. Make it so that fighting you becomes fighting against justice itself. Silence fell over the room. Vex looked at Kalen with an expression Anna couldn't read. Alpha, the Omega makes a point. I know, Kalen said softly. He was looking at Anna with something that made her skin warm. She's been making points since the day she decided a dying wolf was worth saving. He stood, his massive frame commanding the attention of everyone in the room. The vehicles you came in, they have recording equipment. Yes, standard protocol for execution missions. Vex nodded slowly. To verify kills for clients. Pull the footage. Find the moment when Malachar's orders to kill me were confirmed. We broadcasted at the summit. A ripple of energy went through the room. Vex grinned a predator's smile that made Anna's instincts prickle. It would be damning, alpha, incontrovertible proof of fratricide. Then let's make it happen. Kalen's gaze swept the room. We leave at dawn. Anna, I'm coming with you. He paused. It will be dangerous. Staying here alone would be more dangerous. If Malachar discovers you're alive, he'll send more than 5 wolves next time. At least with you, I have protection. You have more than that. Kalen's voice dropped, becoming intimate despite the audience. You have my pack, my name, my everything. Anna's heart stuttered. I haven't agreed to, I know. He held up a hand. I'm not asking for your answer now, but know this, Anna, I meant what I said. You are my mate. Whether you accept the bond or not, I will protect you with my life. He turned back to his commanders, already issuing orders, already planning the war that was about to begin. But Anna couldn't stop staring at the swirling silver scar on his neck. A mate mark, she realized. He already bore a mark, and she had never noticed it on Ash because of his fur. A mark that, if her grandmother's stories were right, would only appear when an alpha found their true mate. A mark that matched the strange, tingling sensation she had been feeling on her own neck since the moment she saw his human form. Oh, she thought, her hand unconsciously rising to her throat. Oh no. Chapter 4. The Luna of Shadow Fang. The convoy raced through the night, eating up the miles between Anna's wilderness cabin and the gleaming towers of Vancouver. Anna sat in the back of the lead SUV, watching the landscape blur past, trying to process the fact that her life had completely upended in the span of a single day. Kalen sat beside her. Not touching, he was scrupulously careful about that, but close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off his body. His presence was simultaneously comforting and overwhelming, like standing in a sunbeam that threatened to burn. You're thinking very loudly, he said, breaking the silence that had stretched between them. Anna snorted. Sorry, I'm just trying to reconcile the fact that I've been baby talking in Alpha Prime for 3 months. Every time you chase snowballs or let me rub your belly, you were fully aware and completely sentient. Kaelin had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. The belly rubs were very soothing. Oh my god. And you have excellent technique with ear scratches. Very thorough. I'm going to die of humiliation. You're not. His voice softened. You're going to live a long and glorious life, Anna. I'm going to make sure of it. She shook her head, still struggling to merge the pup she had loved with the terrifying Alpha beside her. I told you everything, every shameful secret, every painful memory. I cried into your fur and I treasured every word. Kaelin's gaze was intense. I understood every confession, every tear. I know how your father looked at you when he banished you. I know that you sing off key when you wash dishes, but on key when you think no one is listening. I know you dream of seeing the ocean. Anna's eyes stung. She had said all of that, poured her heart out to what she thought was a dying animal, never expecting those secrets to be witnessed and remembered. I also know, Kaelin continued quietly, that you told me you were unlovable, that you were broken, that you deserved what happened to you. She looked away. You were wrong. His hand moved slowly, deliberately, giving her time to pull away and covered hers. You saved me, Anna, not just my body but my soul. When I was trapped in that darkness, unable to speak, unable to shift, your voice was the only light I had. Your kindness was the only warmth. If that makes you broken, then the world needs more broken people. Anna blinked rapidly, refusing to cry. That's you can't just say things like that. Why not? Because I'm an Omega, a reject. I'm nobody. You're my mate. His fingers tightened on hers. You're the woman who kept an Alpha Prime alive with rabbit scraps and lullabies. You're the person who stood between death squads and a crippled pup without flinching. You are the furthest thing from nobody. For a long moment, Anna didn't speak. The words settled into her chest, warming places that had been cold for years. You're extremely manipulative, you know that? She finally said, but there was no real heat in her voice. Using logic and emotional vulnerability to win arguments, Kaelin smiled, that real smile, the one that crinkled his eyes. I learned from watching you negotiate with rabbits in your traps. Very persuasive. Despite everything, Anna laughed. The safe house in Vancouver was less a house and more a fortress disguised as a penthouse. 40 floors above the city streets, accessible only by a private elevator that required 3 different biometric scans. It was the kind of luxury Anna had only seen in magazines, but she barely had time to appreciate the marble floors and floor-toseling windows before they were swept into war preparations. The summit was in 2 days. They had evidence of Malachar's treachery, but delivering it would require navigating a hall full of hostile wolves, any of whom might be in Malachar's pocket. Kaelin's loyalists were scattered, his forces depleted by 4 months of leaderless attrition. They were underdogs. Anna had some experience with that. The Crimson Claw pack will be there, Vex reported, reading from a tablet. They've already pledged preliminary allegiance to Malachar. Anna's blood went cold. Crimson Claw, her old pack, her father, Garrett. Kaelin noticed her reaction immediately. What is it? That she swallowed. That's the pack that banished me. A dangerous stillness came over Kaelin. His violet eyes darkened. The ones who threw you out for refusing to be used. His voice was too calm, too controlled. The ones who chose a liar's word over their own daughters. Yes, they're coming to swear loyalty to my brother. A muscle twitched in his jaw. Interesting. Kylian, give me the names, he said, his gaze still fixed on some middle distance. The Alpha son who framed you, your father. Anyone involved in your banishment? Why? He finally looked at her and the fury in his eyes was terrifying. Because when this is over, they're going to learn what happens when you harm what belongs to me. Anna should have been frightened. She should have recoiled from the naked violence in his promise. Instead, she felt something warm unfurl in her chest, the sensation of having someone in her corner for the first time in her life. Garrett Thornwell, she said quietly. He's the one who started everything. And my father, Stephen Thornwell, was the one who carried out the sentence. Kaelin nodded once, filing the names away. They'll regret ever knowing you. I'll make sure of it. The night before the summit, Anna couldn't sleep. She stood on the penthouse balcony, staring out at the glittering city below. The wind was cold, but after 3 years in the Alaskan wilderness, it felt almost mild. The stars were hidden by light pollution, and she found herself missing the vast canopy of darkness that had been her ceiling for so long. You should be resting. She didn't turn as Kaelin joined her on the balcony. She had known he was there, had felt his presence through a connection that was becoming harder to ignore. Can't sleep, she said simply. The bond, he asked, coming to stand beside her. It can be overwhelming before it's completed. I don't know what it is. She wrapped her arms around herself. I keep thinking about tomorrow, about seeing them again. My father, Marcus, all of them. What if I freeze? What if I'm still that pathetic Omega who couldn't even defend herself? Kaelin turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her shoulders. You survived 3 years in the deadliest wilderness on the continent. You kept an Alpha Prime alive when 100 trained warriors couldn't find him. You stood between 5 Onyx executioners and a broken pup because it was the right thing to do. His voice was fierce. You are not pathetic. You have never been pathetic. They were the ones who were too blind to see your worth. Pretty words, true words. He tilted her chin up, forcing her to meet his gaze. Do you trust me, Anna? The question should have been laughable. She had known his human form for less than 2 days. He was a warlord, a killer, a legend made of blood and terror. But she had known Ash for 3 months. She had nursed him, healed him, and loved him. And looking into Kaelin's violet eyes, she saw the same soul, the same gentle presence that had kept her company through the long winter nights. Yes, she whispered. God help me, I do. Then trust me when I tell you that tomorrow you're not walking into that summit as a banished Omega. You're walking in as my mate, the Luna of Shadow Fang, and anyone who has ever hurt you is going to kneel or burn. She should have argued, should have reminded him that she hadn't agreed to complete the bond, hadn't accepted his mark, wasn't technically his anything. Instead, she rose on her tiptoes and kissed him. It was meant to be brief, a gesture of acceptance, of gratitude, of the complicated feelings she couldn't put into words. But the moment their lips touched, something ignited. The connection between them flared like a wildfire. And suddenly, she was drowning in sensation. His taste, his scent, the electric current of the mate bond demanding completion. Kaelin groaned against her mouth, his arms wrapping around her, pulling her flush against his chest. He kissed her like she was oxygen, and he had been suffocating for years. When they finally broke apart, both gasping, his eyes were blazing. Anla, mark me. He went completely still. What? You said I needed to be claimed by your pack to be protected from Crimson Claw's jurisdiction. Her voice was steady despite her racing heart. You said I'd walk in there as your Luna if I bore the Shadow Fang mark. I did, but the mark is permanent, irrevocable. Once it's given, I know. She met his gaze without flinching. I'm tired of being alone, Kaelin. I'm tired of being afraid. And I'm really tired of being told I'm not worthy of love. His breath caught. Anna, you spent 3 months listening to my every secret. You know me better than anyone alive. She reached up, cupping his face in her hands. Do you want me? Not out of obligation. Not because the bond demands it, but truly, as I am damaged and scarred and difficult as hell, more than I've wanted anything in my entire existence. His voice was raw. From the moment you wrapped me in that ridiculous scarf and told me we rejects had to stick together, I was lost. Then make me yours and tomorrow we'll burn them all. Kaelin's control shattered. The Grand Hall of Vancouver was a monument to werewolf power. A sprawling complex of marble and glass that sat on the edge of the bay like a crown jewel. Thousands of wolves from dozens of packs filled the cavernous main chamber, their formal attire doing little to disguise the predatory nature beneath. At the center of it all, on a raised dais decorated with the banners of the Shadow Fang Dominion, stood Malakarvorn. He looked like a twisted reflection of Kaelin. Similar features, similar build, but where Kaelin's power felt like a sun, Malachar felt like a black hole. Cold, consuming, empty. He was mid-spec when the doors exploded inward. Anna walked through the entrance on Kaelin's arm, and the effect was instantaneous. 2,000 heads turned, whispers erupted like wildfire. Malachar's voice died mid-sentence, his face draining of color. Anna was wearing a gown of midnight blue silk that hugged her curves and left her shoulders bare, specifically to display the intricate silver mark that now adorned her neck. The symbol of Shadow Fang glowed faintly in the hall's lights, proclaiming her status to everyone who could see. Kaelin was dressed in black from head to toe, his presence so overwhelming that wolves were unconsciously stepping back, making room for them to pass. You're dead. Malachar gasped from the daze. I made sure you tried. Kaelin's voice carried through the hall, amplified by his alpha authority. You failed. He stopped in the center of the chamber directly beneath the chandeliers that cast diamond bright light across the assembly. Brothers and sisters of the allied packs, Kaelin announced. I am Kaelin Vaughn, true alpha of the Shadow Fang Dominion. The man on that stage is a traitor who attempted to murder me through poison and treachery. The hall erupted in chaos. Alphas shouted accusations and denials. Malachar roared for his guards, but before the disorder could crescendo, Vex moved to the central screen and broadcast the footage they had recovered. Malakar's own voice filled the hall. I don't care if he's my brother. The alpha position is mine. Kill him and make it look like enemies did it. The silence that followed was absolute. Malachar's supporters began edging away from him. The oath he had been trying to collect suddenly seemed toxic. His power, so solid moments ago, crumbled like sand. You. Malachar snarled, his form beginning to shift in desperate rage. I'll kill you myself. But before he could complete his transformation, Anna stepped forward. The Omega who had been thrown away like garbage, who had survived on scraps and sheer will, who had been told her entire life that she was worthless. She stepped in front of a charging alpha with her head held high. Don't, she said, and her voice was not an Omega's voice. It rang with borrowed power, amplified by the mate bond, carrying the authority of the Shadow Fang Luna. Malachar froze. Not by choice, his muscles simply locked. Caught in the grip of an alpha command he had not expected from such a source. You're not worth my mate's effort. Anna said coldly. Guards, take him! Wolves from multiple packs surged forward, and Malachar was restrained before he could recover. The man who would have been usurper was dragged away screaming, his fate determined by a tribunal of the packs he had tried to deceive. In the front row of the assembly, Anna saw movement, familiar faces turning pale with recognition. Her father, Garrett. She walked toward them, each step deliberate. Behind her, she felt Kaelin's supportive presence, ready to intervene if needed, but letting her fight this battle herself. Her father stood shakily, his face a mask of horror. Anna, I don't. I'm the Luna of Shadow Fang, she said, and the words felt like armor. The pack you just watched me help reclaim. The pack that will now be deciding the fate of those who supported Malachar. We didn't know. You didn't care. Anna's voice cracked with 3 years of suppressed pain. I was your daughter and you threw me away because a spoiled boy's ego was more important than the truth. Garrett tried to step forward, his handsome face twisted with fear. Anna, be reasonable. Whatever happened between us, Kainal, the command came from deep within her. Powered by the bond, powered by years of suffering, powered by the simple fact that she was done being afraid. Garrett's knees hit the marble with a crack. Her father followed a moment later, his proud head bowed in submission. The entire hall watched as the Crimson Claw delegation was brought to heel by the Omega they had discarded. Your pack's alliance is under review, Anna announced, her voice carrying to the farthest corners. Pending investigation into your treatment of wrongfully banished members. In the meantime, I suggest you find new leadership. Quickly, she turned and walked back to Kaelin, who was watching her with an expression of such fierce pride that it made her chest ache. That was magnificent, he murmured, pulling her close. I learned from the best. The pup who chased snowballs. The pup who never stopped fighting. He kissed her then in front of 2,000 witnesses, and the hall erupted into cheers that shook the rafters. 6 months later, a new cabin stood in the wilderness of Whispering Pines. It was larger than the old one. Kaelin had insisted on actual insulation, and a fireplace that didn't smoke, but it sat in the same spot, overlooking the same frozen creek where Anna had first heard a dying pup's cry. She sat on the porch now, wrapped in a blanket, watching the aurora borealis paint the sky in ribbons of green and violet. Kaelin emerged from inside, 2 cups of cocoa in his hands. He had shifted earlier, running through the snow in his wolf form, and his silver-gray hair was still wild and damp. The council wants me to attend the spring summit, he said, settling beside her. Something about trade negotiations with the coastal packs. Anna accepted the cocoa, savoring its warmth. And what do you want? I want to stay here. He pulled her against his side. With you, with our pup. Anna's hand drifted to her stomach, where a second heartbeat had just begun to make itself known. They had discovered it last week. The first heir of the Shadow Fang Dominion, growing in the womb of a woman who had once been considered worthless. The council can wait, she agreed. We have more important things to focus on. Kaelin pressed a kiss to her temple. I still can't believe you saved me with rabbit scraps. And belly rubs, don't forget the belly rubs. Those were very therapeutic. She laughed, the sound floating up into the painted sky. Below them, the wilderness stretched vast and wild and free. The same wilderness that had almost killed her had instead remade her into something stronger. They were the rejects, the broken things, the ones the world had discarded. But together, they had become a force that would reshape the world itself. And somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled, answered by 4 more, then 5, then a dozen. The pack was growing. The family was expanding. The future was bright. Anna closed her eyes, leaning into her mate's warmth, and smiled. They said an Omega without a pack was as good as dead. They were wrong. The end. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as can ever imagine. So, do check it out. Click on the video showing on your screen right now to watch the next.